You're watching Experience Comic Culture and Sales, streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
Hi everybody, it's Miss Jen, and this is Talkin Shop. And just like always, we've got some awesome creators to talk to today. Many of which you may have not met yet. This is like, we like to be the people that introduce you to all the secretly cool awesomeness. So you can be the cool kids and be the person that's talking about it at the water cooler. And everyone will be like, I didn't know about this cool thing until this person told me about it. So stay tuned and you'll find out who they are. Everybody, I'm super excited today. I've actually kind of talked to part of the team from this group before, but I am excited so much to talk to the creative director. Please welcome Mike Tenner.
Hey Jen, thanks for having me.
Awesome. I'm happy to have all the bad bug folk on, even if it's one at a time.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm gonna have to slowly roll this out, I guess. We're all in different time zones, so that makes it kind of exciting to coordinate when we can all jump on at the same time and do something like this.
Yes. Okay, so is your background virtual? Do you own all those arcade machines?
No, this is real. Yeah, those are
wow.
They're the arcade one-ups, so if you catch them at the right time, they're on sale, and then you can just buy up in bulk, and that's what I did.
So what is the difference between the regular arcade machine and the one-ups? Because I haven't never owned one.
They're like they're ROMs, like they're not the original program that ran in the arcade cabinets like that you'd see in the arcades. Like they either modified them or updated them so that they could be in high definition on a flat LCD screen. So basically all the perks of modern technology, but you're losing a little bit of that nostalgia with the old cabinets, those CRT screens that bulge, and you can tell they've aged, and you don't have to worry about that with these. These are pretty modern.
Okay, so to me, one of the biggest things about those big arcade cabinets was that they had a certain hum. Do they have a hum?
They don't have the hum. Oh, that's the CRTVs. That's they had that little it always felt like there was something behind the scenes going on in those monitors. Like there's like a little workshop back there with a bunch of gremlins working behind the scenes to make all this pop up on the screen. That was always the feeling that I had whenever I go to the arcades as a kid. So I know what you're talking about with the hum.
I've owned one. My husband bought for me the Virtua Fighter 2 that we used to play when we were dating. So we owned that for a while. And I always thought for myself, when you went from like the hard start, like when you turned it on, it was like to me a 50-50 chance it might blow up is the way it sounded.
That's a romantic gift. I got a comment on that too. It's a very thoughtful and romantic gift.
It was super much. I mean, like other people, when they would come over and be like, "What did you get this for?" And I'd say the reason why. And we have a great many friends that are not part of the nerd community, sure. And so you could tell they'd be like, "That's so sweet," but they were like, "I don't understand."
Right.
we're super competitive, he and I, and that we have our characters we play all the time. We figured out our ways around the game.
That's awesome.
Wreck-It Ralph isn't real. Oh, yeah, true. Sorry. I see Cool Gamers on. Hey, cool. All right. So, tell me your background. Are you 100% in comic books, or you have another industry you work in also?
No, I'm a retail district manager by day, and then creative director at night and weekends, just wherever I can fill in the gaps. So, been doing that with comics. I've been involved for about 6 years, but only really seriously within the last 2.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can have a full career in comic books and still have a secondary career. I think there's plenty of people out there that are like comic book artist and, lawyer. And
yeah, I kind of like, I had enough friends that were fortunate enough to tell me early on, like, hey, if you're in this industry to make money, you're going to be upset. So I think going into it with that mindset and knowing that I'm going to have to do something to feed that addiction of making comics, and that's going to come from the money that I make at my day job. And that's kind of always been the status quo for me, is to understand that I would have to for a little while at least fund it myself.
It's okay. It's a time-honored tradition that goes back to the beginning of this industry. So welcome.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So do you have hey Cuthbert, do you have are you an artist, a writer? Do you have any of those backgrounds, editor?
So I started off as a writer, just making a comic for the first time, and then over time built quite a few relationships with other writers and creators. So I decided to step back and support other writers and creators more, and that's kind of like my current role. I still write 2 books, but I had like 7 properties, and I gave those to the other writers in our group to take over because time. I was I lost time. I didn't have as much of it, so it was kind of nice to see these properties take on new life with other writers and kind of see that grow. But yeah, that was where I started. But I was more fascinated in kind of being a creative lead, and marketing is something that I'm getting really interested in now. So I've just started to buy a bunch of marketing books, digital marketing books, and about to plow through all those and pursue more of that field or that avenue of the comic industry. Really is what I'm aiming to do.
I think a lot of people don't necessarily think about that skill as being a very important skill for comic books, but it's kind of like the make or break it for comic booking, because it used to be there was no social media, so the way you got your word out there was you just went and set up your little 8-foot booth at every single Comic-Con you could drive to, and made sure you talked and shook hands with everyone you could. It was really the only way around it, or cold call publishers. I mean, the best we had was like faxing in the 90s. There was no internet yet, so
I'm very fortunate. Like, I'll just say that much. I'm not taking any of that for granted. Social media has been really probably the best tool that we've had in our arsenal, in my arsenal anyway, to get word out. But yeah, like knowing, I just can't imagine what that experience was like, trying to like create awareness on your brand and having to do all of that in person. Really, like there was no virtual foundation for any of that stuff. So I'm pretty blessed to in 2022 to be able to do that.
Absolutely. So. And I also have my eyes really open. I recently, Nate Butler, who's a long time creator in the comic book industry, moved away to Alaska and left all his things with me to he's kind of retiring out of the business. So it's really everything he ever used, like even his personal like pens and pencils and all just everything. But what I learned from this is like he kept every piece of paper, letters, contracts, everything. He had all of it for everything he ever did. So it was crazy. Like I thought that when in the 90s were around, it was hard, but he grew up in a generation where you literally typed up letters and sent them through the mail to cold ask random people. Like he has a letter that he sent to Eric Von Daniken, who is famous for his Ancient Aliens theories, Chariots of the Gods. He sent just a letter to him like, hey, this is what I do. Do you have any use for the things that I do? It's just, whoever they thought might need their work.
You got to appreciate that hustle.
Yeah.
It's like, I guess the level of respect that I have for people that really push themselves to do that every day is pretty impressive, right? So if I ever feel exhausted, I feel like it's unjustified. Like like you said, there
Pull
were
out a
people that were.
typewriter.
Yeah, like I'm just imagining like being at the typewriter. Oh, hey, I got to get a new ink ribbon. I got to go out and get that. Oh, I got to take all this mail to the post office. Man, I really wish there was a way that I could send this mail, electronically, so I don't have to go out in the snow. I mean, all those things. We have a lot of conveniences now, so it's funny to think about just really how that culture's changed over time, and there's so much more exposure to it now, right? Like being around like in the indie comics community, it's just crazy how many creators there are, and it makes you think about how many there were that we just never got to hear about.
Oh,
We
there's
never
so
saw
many
or
people that had regular jobs. It's just like in movies and TV, right, where there's character actors that you may never have known their name. You know all the parts they ever played. I think that there's plenty of creators out there in the comic book industry that they might not ever have been a household name, but they were important to, most of what we read growing up.
Right. Yeah.
Letter mail, is that a new app? Yes, Josh. Totally is. Josh Wentz with us. Also, just a reminder, this is a completely interactive interview. So if you have any questions for Mike, just make sure you can just type it in, and I'll make sure that he gets to see them no matter what platform you're watching from today. I appreciate y'all. All right. So what was your first creative piece in comic books?
I did a superhero book, and I called it The Dragonfly, and it was through Kid Comics. And I did 6 issues of that, and there were a lot of ideas brewing elsewhere, but I wanted to continue and finish a story arc. I felt like the push to actually complete an issue was hard. Mm-hmm. Really was. And then once you got a finished book in your hand and you're looking at it, it creates an addictive habit there where you just keep making comics. So as I'm making that one, I'm like, all right, I want to make this series now. Oh, I have another idea for a series. And then I outgrew my wallet, so I had to kind of be patient with, moving to the next project. So yeah, after 6 issues of that, that's when I started to get a little bit more confident about what I was doing. And it was nice to be able to kind of reset in a way creatively and start something new. And that series was called The Black Jackets, and that was the first Bad Bug title, was The Black Jackets. And we just wrapped up the first arc of that, and we're going to move on to a second arc, and we have several titles that we've been releasing between now and then and now. So it's been an interesting journey, to say the least. But working with a lot of other writers has been probably the most rewarding experience. So from becoming a writer to working with writers and understanding their creative process and how they create properties and books and how they think like a storyteller has been the most rewarding thing, is being able to build that rapport with people creatively.
Who was there at the beginning of Bad Bug? Who makes the Bad Bug creative team for this at the beginning?
Oh, wow. So very beginning was me, my friend Scott Wilkie, good friend Alan Dunford, and Dave Lentz, who's a letterer that seems to letter everyone's books. Everybody knows who Dave is. So so that's where that started. And then I think just over time, other people gravitated towards us, and we're a group of 14, I think, now.
Oh, that's a good group.
Yeah, decent size. So
that's awesome. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what is going on right now for Bad Bug. I understand you've got two books that are in process at Kickstarter right now. Is this correct?
Yes. Yeah. So just to give everyone a little bit of familiarity with Bad Bug, we like horror. So we like monsters. We like sci-fi. So and we kind of this month is kind of like a really rewarding month for all of us, because we all have titles that would work well within the month of October in celebration of Halloween. But obviously we have to release books throughout the year. But the 2 titles that we have releasing right now, one is wrapping up on Kickstarter. It's just a few days away from actually closing. is Midnight Highway. And that's probably our most successful series when it comes to sales. And all of that is it's a love letter to 80s horror. If you grew up loving 80s horror and science fiction, Midnight Highway is, to quote my co-writer on that book, Alex Madej, it's really just a John Carpenter, Stephen King influence series. Like those were the two major influences that we had going into it. And all it is it's just this kid that gets stranded on a supernatural highway, and all he wants to do is get back to the real world, back to the love of his life. He's 19 years old. He's got the whole world in front of him, but unfortunately he's on this highway, and now he needs to get off. And it's really just like an Alice in Wonderland trip through just this very bizarre landscape, and all of any supernatural threat that you can think of exists on this road. So each issue seems to kind of have its own little sub story, like a B story that kind of helps propel the character forward on his journey. But you never can really anticipate what's going on with that series. So that ends in a few days. We're doing pretty well on Kickstarter. It's funded, and there's stretch goals. So everybody that wants to dive in, absolutely, this will be your bag. If you, like I said, love 80s horror and science fiction, you're going to love it. Promise.
So that's and JD Smith watching from our Twitch stream saying that they got definite Stephen King Creepshow vibes from your
nice.
Video.
Yep, it's strange too, because it's not an anthology series yet. It feels like it, because every threat is its own isolated thing on the highway. So our character Alex just, as he's making his way down this mysterious road, there's these strange detours that he has to take, or there's dead ends, and then suddenly he has to face something that, by no means any of us would ever be able to predict or anticipate. So there's this real big element of subverting expectations, and anthologies did that. Stephen King did that really well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, check it out. I mean, there's all kinds of goodies on there. I mean, we made a 3D version of all of our books for Midnight Highway. So like, if you guys remember the blue and red 3D, we made every issue in 3D. And I saw the note.
I love this comment. And it said, yeah. So JD now says, when I say video, I mean Mike's video stream in his red room right now.
It's a bit romantic over here. I set the tone really well in my my office. So but it's honestly, for us, that's been our passion series. And then the cool thing about it is, because Midnight Highway kind of has an anthology element to it, we decided to actually make an anthology under Bad Bugs. So we the next one that's launching tomorrow on Kickstarter is called Roseblood Manor, and that is all stories written by Bad Bug veterans and artists that we've worked with before too. So it's kind of nice. It's like all people that we're all familiar with each other. We've all worked together before, and now there's 12 of us co-creating this anthology series and building this from the ground up as a group. And it's been a pretty exciting experience, but results have been phenomenal, and we're really proud of our first issue, and we're going to continue to pursue this series pretty aggressively over the next year.
So I'm guessing everything happens in and around the manor itself.
So somewhat it shares some similarities to Midnight Highway, and I'll say it this way because the Midnight Highway exists in no actual present space. It could be interdimensional. It could show up in different time frames, different places. So Roseblood Manor is something that we created to be like an urban legend, and people remember seeing the manor. People remember being in it, but they don't know when or where that was, but they remember being there. And so it manifests in several different ways depending on the story, how it services the story. And it's been really interesting to see the writers come up with these stories inspired by the concept, and it still goes off in these wild directions that no one could have anticipated. And so finding ways for that all to come back together and connect to this haunted house that's been displaced, and we're never quite sure if it really existed or not. it's been pretty exciting to see that come together creatively.
Okay, so for both of those series, Midnight Highway and Rosebud Manor, are they meant to be single shots or are they ongoing?
Ongoing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. There's so many stories to tell. So, and we have several titles and we support all of our titles and we believe in all of our titles. But then there are other titles, it's like having 12 kids, like we know you have a favorite. You don't have to say it because you love all your kids. We get it, but you've got a favorite. Don't lie about it. Everyone's got a favorite kid. These are some of our favorites. We really are passionate about both of these properties and the way they've developed. So we're going to continue making them.
Okay, so you mentioned that Bad Bug loves horror. So I'll have to ask you, what is your favorite horror movie?
So it changes all the time. All right, so there's that, and I'm like marathoning right now. I'm going through October. I'm making my wife watch all this stuff. She's not crazy about scary movies. I made her watch The Thing because I think that's probably my favorite. John Carpenter's The Thing from 1982. It's a tough call, but like I usually pick something from the 80s. I always find myself going back to The Thing because there's that sense of dread, unknown. Fear develops just because of the amazing practical effects in that film. So you see this dark reality of what can happen with this creature. It's making people's bodies contort and change and all this stuff. So you can see the brutality of this creature, and then the rest of the time you're just looking at humans wondering which one is next. Which one has it right now. So yeah, and then I see somebody's Kurt Mother effing Russell. I'm a huge Kurt Russell fan. Love Kurt Russell.
Yeah, and I do love how they leave that film. You can't. It's unsettling.
It even ends with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're both sitting there saying they can't really trust each other. They're just both sitting there and just hoping that neither of them are lying and that they're okay. But yeah, they leave you at a very desperate point with those two characters. So I always love that ending.
I also thought that I cannot remember who does the soundtrack for that film, but the sound is just so simple for that allows you to have dread. It really is just a double beat, that dun dun. There's other
Carpenter.
little happen.
That's the great thing about John Carpenter is that he almost always does the music for his films. So, and it's rare that you see that, right? It's rare that you see a director be able to score his own films. So, and he does that frequently, so he knows how to tell that story from even that side, which is always really cool. So I think that's another reason why I appreciate The Thing, I suppose.
So fun story. That is the movie that I begged my dad to go see when I was 13 in the movie theater. I thought it was awesome when I was in the movie theater. I thought it was the best movie ever. And I kidded about it all the way home. And I thought it was super silly when I went to bed. And I thought I was like, this is so easy because I'd watched a bunch of, B horror flicks growing up. And then I could not sleep. Like it undid me at night. I haven't been able to go back and watch it. It is my nemesis, that movie, because it affected me deeply.
Wow. Okay. That's there's a lot of them that have affected me. I think that's the thing. That's probably the draw of horror, right? Is that you cross thresholds. Once you've seen something like that, now you're like, okay, I've already seen the worst. So what can be worse than that? You know what I mean? Like Exorcist. Everybody always talks about. I saw The Exorcist and they feel like they get a badge for it. I got to see Cannibal Holocaust, so now I got that badge. Whatever it is, but there's different films can get you in different ways, and The Thing just had that very paranoia, almost like Jaws, where like you said, the music, it was kind of like the cue that it was around, that it was near. It had a presence because it had that theme. And that was hard hard to get past that. I think the thing was very effective with that.
I think there's two kinds of horror films. There's horror films that are successful for what happens off screen, and there are horror films that are successful because of what happens on screen.
Yes.
And I'm way more terrified about things that happen off screen because your mind fills it in the worst possible way.
You know, I was talking about this recently because I'm driving everybody crazy with it right now. Like everybody in Bad Bug and my wife even is. I'm on a huge Hellraiser kick, and out of nowhere, like they did the reboot, I guess, recently, and it was pretty good. I thought it was anyway. But
Wilkie's on.
What's that?
God, Wilkie jumped in.
Oh, Wilkie. Hey, Wilkie. Oh, so you couldn't be on, but you can be in the chat. That's nice to know. There's Sean too. Yeah, Paranormal Activity messed me up too.
Oh,
my wife talks about that one a lot because that was another one. Well, nothing. When you think about it, there's only a few things that really happen, but the progression, the way it builds, is just so fascinating. And static camera use, right? There's just cameras mounted, and that's all you're seeing is just certain viewpoints, right? So they definitely make that work in their favor. Absolutely.
All right, we've got just a couple of minutes. I definitely want everyone to be able to find both of your Kickstarters so they can support both of these awesome spooky books. They both Kickstarted, or are they on other platforms?
No, Kickstarter. That's who we use primarily. So you'll find us on Kickstarter. Search just Midnight Highway. You'll see the past campaigns. The recent one is number 3, and you can pick up 1 through 3.
Perfect. So you're going to need your keywords you're looking up are Roseblood Manor.
Yes.
The other one's Midnight Highway.
Correct.
Everyone, if you wanted to follow, if people wanted to follow you and everything that happens at Bad Bug, what's the best platform, and what is the keywords for them to hunt?
So follow me on Facebook, Mike Teener. Not many people have that name. So it's relatively easy to find my goofy, nerdy name. And then Substack. We're on Substack. So we have a newsletter that we have a good reader base over there as well. So yeah, just search Bad Bug Media on Substack and you'll find us. Perfect. Or badbugmedia.substack.com. I think that's the URL.
Perfect. It looks like Sean's offering me to read the Midnight Highway stuff that I don't have yet. So thank you, Sean.
Oh no, yeah, I'll get you whatever you need. Yeah, I'll make you read Midnight Highway. That one I'll make you read. I'll harass you about it.
All right, everybody. Make sure you either go support this directly or start poking your local comic shop to consider like backing them if there's a retailers here so that they can have them on the rack for you and other people so they can get in on the cool stuff.
Yay.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate you. We'll have you back on when you got the next thing. I know there's going to be lots coming out from Bad Bug that we're going to want to hear about. So we'll see you
I appreciate you. Thank you.
All right, stick around, everybody. I have another awesome guest right after this break.
There's something for every imagination at your local comic shop. Visit ComicShopLocator.com to find a store near you.
Comic Collectibles is a pretty straightforward show. You got Rex here, he sells the comics, and you got Rocket Robbie, he knows about the comics. And finally, John, well, no one really knows what John does. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a great guy, but he just keeps showing up. Come to think of it, I don't even really know how he gets in here. Anyway, awesome comics, rare books, rarer signatures, slabbed books, and amazing cover sketches by Ken Hazer and others. Simple formula, you want the comics, you buy the comics. To sum up, Rex sells the comics, Robbie knows the comics, and John, who might possibly be a ghost. I mean, seriously, has anyone ever seen him show up or leave? Comic Collectibles with Rex and John, Mondays from 6 to 8 Eastern on The Experience. Comic Culture and Sales.
Did you know that every Experience show, including some exclusive content, streams on Twitch? Check it out, twitch.tv/the_EXP. Or just scan that QR code. Join the party. Head over to our link tree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.
Everybody, welcome back. You're on the air with Talkin Shop, where we like to talk to creators about the things they have coming out so you could be in the know and hunt them down also, because as we know, there are great things coming out from more than just the big two. There's a time-honored tradition of being a self-created comic book person, and trust me, as being one of them back in the 90s, I always super appreciated the support. Eventually get those words out. Welcome to the show, Josh Ross.
Welcome.
All right. Do you go by Joshua or Josh?
I usually go by Josh. I'm cool with either or. So whatever.
I just don't want to do it wrong, because sometimes if I call people by their full name, then they think mom's coming after them with the belt, and I don't want that to happen. You're not in trouble.
No, I think my printed name, I usually use Joshua, but people tend to call me Josh. So I'm cool either way. So
perfect. I think you are the first person I've got to talk to in a long time that's doing is not doing fiction. I'm excited about this.
It is fiction, but it is I'd say loosely inspired. It is it is definitely telling sort of aspects of my life, but it is not. I would not call it necessarily autobiographical. I would say creative fiction is more the. There are definitely a lot of aspects of me in the book, but it is definitely not telling like a true account of me. It is fictional characters. Most of the characters are made up completely for the book, but there are a lot of aspects of based on my life, I guess.
Okay, we're going to get deep into that. But first, I want to get into what is your connection to comic books before?
I've been doing comic books in some aspect for the last 20 something years. I've been working with Dirk Manning for about 20 years now. So that has been probably the biggest thing. Comic books have been a love of my life since, I was 11, 12. I wanted to be an animator when I was a kid. It was all Thundercats and Transformers and that kind of stuff. And I learned that I was not cut out for animation. It was way too much work. I guess I really kind of discovered comic books as a kid and realized I could do this.
Sorry for what we don't know.
Probably knowing each other for the last 20 years. And yeah, I kind of got into comic books because I realized I could do that myself. So I drew a lot of comic books in my teens, 30, 40, 50 page books on my own, just because it was fun. And then tried to make a career out of it and eventually met Dirk Manning through a random email. And we've been friends ever since. So for the last 20 years, it's pretty much been working with Dirk Manning. Work on the side, random projects, help launch Tales of Mystery, worked on Nightmare World for years. And then, in the back of my mind, I've been stewing on wanting to do my own project because I haven't done something for myself since 2001, something around that. So, but comic books is a passion. It's a love of mine. I'll, just can't ever give that up.
So do you ever kind of look back on those early creations that you just did for yourself? Do you ever look at them and say that there's good source material here, or do you think to yourself, I'm glad I practiced out of the public eye?
Some of it's fun. Some of it was very personal. I definitely did stories that were me and my friends. Some were just essential rip-offs of like Image Comics and stuff like that in the night. A 12, 13-year-old kid just wanting to draw Spawn and that kind of stuff. Big McFarlane fan back in the day. So some of it is pretty cringy. Some of it's a lot of fun. It's all just learning and growing, but it's always a good time to look back on that.
Absolutely. All right. So what for Nightmare World and for Tales of Mystery, what did you get to do for those projects?
I did 9 Nightmare World stories. I don't put me on the spot to remember the names of all of them. Disaster Piece and boy. It's been so many years. Half those stories I drew 15 to 20 years ago. So, but I was just a regular on that. You know, we now Dirk Manning's embarrassed that we're talking, but yeah, I just drew a lot of those stories. It was fun. I became a regular on that, you know, and then that because we had worked so well together when he started to branch off into Mystery, he offered me that book. Mm-hmm. And I jumped at it. And that was, you know, initially started as a webcomic, and it's fun to see that it's still running to this day, you know, different creative teams, and kind of cool to go, hey, I helped start that. So.
Well, okay. So then you're guilty for addicting me to the universe that has been built, because Tales of Mystery was my first Dirk Manning.
You know, at least somewhat, I guess somewhat my fault, you know. And it was fun in that point because it was those short 8-page stories, you know. It was kind of the Nightmare World format. Mm-hmm. Since then, he's, you know, become kind of Dirk Manning's passion too, that now that's a regular character that he has turned into more full format kind of thing. So
yeah, which by the way, I'm going to put it out there. If you guys haven't tracked down the volume 5 and read it fully, you should, because there's some big stuff that happens in those last few pages. And there might be a redhead in there you might recognize. Just saying. I don't know why there's a redhead that you might recognize, but it's way cool. And now I have a cosplay I can do, but I have to work on my abs. So, all right. So let's talk about Left Turns, because I love what you're saying, that it's loosely based on your life. And so I wonder to myself, why you didn't go straight autobiographical? Were you worried that there wasn't enough interesting twists and turns in your life to get it going?
I don't know. I'm sure there are. I feel like if I would have told my own story, it would have turned into like a 1,000-page book. You know, I don't know. Life is mundane, but we all have regular stories, and you start telling that. And like answer these questions in like a 2-minute thing, I end up rambling for 20 minutes about it. Because I mean, this story I wrote the original script plot, layout for this story, God, at this point, like 18 years ago. I'd gone through a breakup with a long-term girlfriend, had met a new girl that we had a summer romance, kind of wrote this plot. And I mean, I'm a big fan of Jeffrey Brown and, you know, reading all those kind of things. I love autobiographical thing, Alex Robinson, blankets, all that kind of stuff. I love sort of, whether it's autobiographical or, I don't know, slice of life stories is some of my favorite stuff. So it's something I've kind of wanted to do. And I never necessarily wanted to tell my story, but at some point I just wrote down like 2 pages, and it was basically a plot line of everybody I'd liked in my life, from kindergarten through whatever. It's just like, here's a sentence, a paragraph, crush, you know, lost loves, whatever. And I was like, well, maybe someday I'll tell this story. And then when COVID hit, you know, at first they shut us down for 2 weeks, and I was like, well, that's, you know, in my head, I knew it was going to be at least a month. And I'm the kind of person who's like, I can't just sit around for a month and do nothing. And I was like, well, maybe this is my chance to start a new comic, do something for myself. Like I just can't sit around my house for a month. And this was definitely not the thing I wanted to do. I wanted to do something a little more crazy, action-packed, something a little more wild. But I didn't have a script. And in my head, I was like, well, I'm going to waste a month hypothetically writing something that eventually I'll want to draw, but never have the time to do it. So I had this loose plot, and I said, I'm just going to start drawing it. And I kind of turned them into fictional characters. I had Dirk Manning read it. My brother used to write a lot. I had him read over it. He's sort of a character in this. And they just kind of helped me tighten it up into a story. Let's make it a cohesive. So it's not just a slice of life, but it's telling a moment in somebody's life, and it has a beginning, middle, end kind of thing. And then just to like not get into personal stuff too much. It's nice to sort of like put myself in there, but not have to worry about exes being upset, best friends being upset, somebody not feeling like they're left out, siblings and stuff. Like I've got, 2 brothers and a sister, but I didn't want to write whole families and have to flesh out every character. So there's only one brother in the story, things like that. So it's just easier to kind of go, I just wanted to tell a good story than I wanted to tell my story.
Mhm.
But at the same time, because it's my story, it was fun to sort of just put myself in there in certain aspects. So it's a 50-50. I think as I got going more along the lines, I definitely threw more of myself in it. There's background things, moments, kind of tells the story of how I met my wife. You know, there's the name is definitely inspired by a moment that it was a left turn. My wife and I would not have met if it wasn't for a random left turn kind of thing. So there are these moments that there are definitely aspects of my life in it, but in a completely fictional made up kind of way. So
I bet you this happens a lot where people sit down to write their life and they're like, well, for these same reasons, I don't want anyone to be like suing you for all your jelly beans.
Yeah, that and real life is raw, you know, like I definitely at times was like, how intimate do I get? What kind of stories do I want to tell? What kind of awkwardness? I mean, some of the Jeffrey Brown stuff, you know, it definitely gets very personal at times. He changes names and stuff, but you know, there's just a lot of awkwardness in real life in relationships. And I was like, how much do I want to dwell on this? Or do I just want to tell the story of how boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy reflects on girl, boy finds new girl, you know, kind of type of story, you know, and artistic dreams, like how do you become, and that was a big part of it. Like when we hired Drina Joe, who's worked on, you know, a lot of stuff with Dirk Manning to like edit this story, you know, she really had a good time reading it and kind of going and definitely tightened it up, helped me like pull in the artistic aspects of it. Like it's a relationship story, but a huge part of it is that artistic drive. Like how do you become a comic book artist? And I think there's definitely a lot of aspects of that in me where it's like, I've always loved comic books. I'll always do comic books, but I might not ever become a professional comic book artist, but you can still do it. You know, you do it because you love it and you'll just, you know, you don't have to make a career out of it and still do it kind of thing. So there's a huge aspect of that in it too. Like he can't quit drawing because that's who he is kind of part, you know. So it kind of hits a lot of those kind of topics.
So do you think that part of the reason for making this was kind of to put out there some form of this is the way life is and it's okay if yours looks like mine?
Yes, I think in some ways, yes. You know, in some ways it was me wanting to tell my story. In some ways it was me just wanting to tell a story. But I think there's a lot of aspects that people can relate to this. And it is a cohesive story. Like a lot of slice of life stories, you're just getting that. You know, I'm a big fan of stuff that is just like a chunk. You're just getting like, there's not really a beginning and there's not really an end. You're just getting a chunk. Where this story kind of has a beginning, middle, and end. You are getting parts, but it does feel like a cohesive book. That's one thing Drina definitely helped me pull this together when it ends, you're like, okay, everything ties together. This is nice. It's not necessarily all kitten kisses and happy endings, but it comes together in a way that you're like, this is positive and this is nice and life goes on kind of thing. So
I think that Drina Joe is like one of those awesome examples of like why editing is important and why having a great editor lifts things to their best possible selves. And I don't think people realize what editors really do. I think they think that editors go through and make spell checks and make sure the grammar is okay, but that's not really what happens. They really do, like you said, they read it through and just make you talk through. Can this section be told in a different way that's more succinct, or does this part of the story make sense at all in the story?
She was, this book ended up being 400 and something pages and she probably cut 20-30 pages out of it because she's like, why are we reflecting on these parts? These people don't need to be in it, you know, like, and that, because I did start drawing it initially as a guy reflecting on his relationships who just happened to draw comic books, and she pulled in let's make the comic book part an equal part of the story too, and just made it stronger. We don't need to see 3 pages of some random girl in kindergarten or something. Like it doesn't work towards the end game kind of thing. So she was great for that kind of stuff. So,
left turns equals big themes. Okay.
Yeah. You know.
It's Dirk giving feedback.
And I mean, because we've been friends for so long, he was pretty much along every step of the way. He was giving advice as well too. He didn't play the editor so much, but definitely him and my brother and Drina, the three of them, just, these pages don't work. This doesn't make sense. Why would you do this? But Drina definitely pulled it together. But it would have never gotten done if it wasn't for Dirk Manning as well. So he has been a huge part of this book. So.
All right, since you're on the inside good friends group of all those guys, do you have like a fun story you can share? Like, I know that there's many ice cream stories out there with Dirk. Any other fun stories?
I'm sure there's probably some goofy ones. I mean, we've been friends. We've met many times. He was a part of my wedding. I was a part of his wedding. I'm trying to think of something goofy. I don't really have a silly situation.
Are you guys from the same neck of the woods?
No. I live about an hour north of Philadelphia, and he's near Toledo. We just met online, and we started going to the Pittsburgh Comic Convention because it was almost equidistant for both of us. So that's, we've been working a year or more, and we're like, hey, let's meet up one time. And we don't see each other terribly often, but we try to cross paths every couple of years or so. Yes, we did get speeding tickets. Yes, that might be something. I mean, it's not embarrassing. It's not that funny, but we did do the Pittsburgh Comic Con one year, and we both got home 4 or 5 hours later, and we got in touch and happened to share stories. And I'm kind of complaining to him, I got pulled over an hour right outside of Pittsburgh for driving 81 miles an hour in a car that barely topped 65. So I was pretty upset that I was like, there was no way that I was speeding, but I got a ticket and got a citation, and I was kind of upset that I had to pay this fine. And he's like, well, that's funny. I got pulled over about an hour outside of Pittsburgh as well for doing 81 miles an hour. So he probably was doing 81, but but it was funny that we both got pulled over an hour outside of Pittsburgh for driving 81 miles an hour. So I don't know.
You were not going the same direction, I am certain.
Yeah, it was a weird coincidence, but I think a lot of our stories are coincidence. I'm sure we have plenty of weird moments, but off the top of my head, I can't think of terribly, too many. If he prompts me for a few, I'm sure I can come up with a couple. We've plenty of inside jokes and random laughs and stuff, but we've been, just big supporters of each other. So a lot of our relationship is just patting each other on the back and saying, good job, keep going. Lots of whip cracking, get these pages done kind of thing. So.
All right, here's a great question that Sean's come up with. What would you say is the hardest part about coming up with dialogue for the book? I find that to be the hardest thing in trying to flesh an idea out.
My book definitely is not the way I'd recommend most people going. I just started drawing. I had a loose plot. I knew this guy was going to be 3 pages of him sitting in in his house, sitting on the couch, unpacking, meeting friends at a diner. Okay, let's draw 4 or 5 pages of random people sitting. I didn't draw a line or write a line of dialogue until I draw on the whole book.
Oh, wow. I've never ever heard anyone tell me that ever.
I guess I heard that's the old Marvel method that Stan Lee or somebody would write old plots and you'd know, okay, Green, it might say Green Goblin and Spider-Man punches Green Goblin, but there was no dialogue. They just knew draw 20 pages of, and I mean, it might be written out line for line or panel for panel, Green Goblin crashes through the window and Spider-Man punches Green Goblin. I heard the writers didn't know the script. It was after the pages came in that Stan Lee would write the dialogue to go with it, So yeah, especially for a sort of autobiographical life type story, it was strange. But I felt if I could draw a 350 plus page book and it flowed with no dialogue, then I had something. You don't know what they're talking about, but you see people laughing, hanging out, talking, you got the emotions. Here's the next panel. He's sitting in his computer typing or something. So yeah, it was a little strange. So I drew the whole thing and then I started scripting it, and it was a little hard at first. I mean, I knew where the story was going, but to make it flow was different. But I also felt if I started scripting it, I would have spent 6 months trying to script it and had not drawn anything as well either. So I just wanted to get the ball rolling, and it went pretty smoothly for me. I definitely had to rearrange some panels here and there, change a few of expressions when I started writing dialogue. I don't know. I ramble a lot. So when I start writing, I just had the pages in front of me and I just started typing a lot of times, just over the pages. They weren't fitting in word balloons. They weren't doing anything. I just started writing dialogue and then I would start going, okay, what flows here and there? What sounds natural? I read a lot of movie scripts. I started watching a lot of reading sitcom scripts, stuff like that to kind of see pacing and dialogue and how stuff like that worked. A lot of just research. If I was oh, they're talking about something, I would just Google existential questions or something and then start reading through people's comments and forums and be oh, that makes sense. Okay, that kind of works. Let's take something from that. And just some pages took forever. There are some scenes I wrote 8 pages in a night, and there are some pages, a 4 or 5 page scene might have taken me 2 weeks of just slamming my head against the table going, this isn't flowing the way I want. Let me work this out.
Yeah.
And some of the heavier scenes at the end where he kind of has a meetup with his ex-girlfriend and they just kind of have their conversation. Definitely took me a few weeks, and I had to add some new pages, and I think I cut and pasted almost every panel because I had it and it just didn't work, and I had to kind of redo that whole thing. So it was a little trial and error, but I don't know. I don't really have a whole lot of advice. Just speak from your head, but do your research.
Just imagine you doing
some people have
65 pages of art before writing down a word. That's kind of cool.
It is definitely different. It's not how I planned on going, but I don't know. It kind of worked. I don't think that's the Kevin Smith method, but but I was always a big fan of his. So a lot of my characters do talk a lot. There's a lot of dumb jokes. There's a lot of just friends hanging out, just trying to write normal dialogue and make it feel like it went somewhere. So.
I almost feel like it would be a fun add-on tier to get the book with no dialogue.
I guess that would be kind of cool. Or some scenes. There's so many pages that were cut out that is one of the tiers. I did a comic book 20-something years ago back in college, and then I redrew it called Put Some Pants On. And that is one of the bonus tiers. Because a large part of Left Turns is the guy writing a book called Pants. And I wasn't going to call it Pants. That was just a placeholder thing. I was going to have him do something else. And I was like, comic book 20 years ago. This is sort of in that same timeline. He did a book called Pants. So that is a bonus tier to get the comic book Put Some Pants On, which was the original inspiration for my fictional character writing a comic book called Pants. But I do plan on, with the printing of that, adding a bunch of bonus, deleted scenes. We'll get to that. Yes, there's this book coming out by Source Point Press. I'm kind of talking about what it is. And Put Some Pants On will have deleted scenes, bonus scenes. That might be kind of cool idea just to throw in a couple pages with no dialogue and just, I don't know. My mother-in-law said I should just put it out with empty word balloons and you can just write your own dialogue.
That would be kind of
maybe practice pages. Here's a scene.
Yeah.
Dialogue.
I just want to see if I can come up with a legible story with just art inspiration and balloons.
Yeah.
I would buy such a thing, honestly.
Might be kind of cool as a bonus thing. I don't know if people want to spend $40 on a blank page, but a 20-page story or something with no dialogue. That's kind of cool. There's some great. G.I. Joe had it's one of those classic Snake Eyes stories that had no dialogue, stuff like that. Those are, I guess I love stories that have some old Ninja Turtle books had no dialogue in them. And it's just a silent story. So it's different when you have a slice of life story than an action story, but it's still, if it flows, it flows. So.
That's true. There's a big book that I read recently that's kind of a slice of life about a kid who, his family has a breakup problem and he has to go take care of his grandma. And it's just one of these super awkward telling of a tale. It's amazing.
Yeah,
and most of it is no dialogue at all. It's just straight up watching him walk through his life.
It sounds
There's
great.
no dialogue for you.
But I do love that kind of stuff. So,
All right. So clarify the comment that Dirk mentioned that Source Point Press picked up.
Yeah,
Which book?
Source Point Press did pick up Left Turns, so they are publishing Left Turns. So yes, right now we are running a Kickstarter for Left Turns. So we've done a lot of rambling about my book that is coming out through Source Point Press. The Kickstarter is running right now through Kickstarter at leftturnscomic.com. We're just about to hit the second week, so we're only 1 week into the campaign. It's going very well so far. We reached our goal in about 3 hours. A lot of the high-end stretch tiers went very quickly, but we still have plenty of copies, bonus prints and autograph copies and all these things that come with it. I do like the idea of maybe, if it keeps going, adding a bonus silent pages. That might be something kind of cool to add to it. We were just having a discussion 45 minutes ago about, like, if we hit new stretch tiers, what kind of bonus things we could add to it, kind of thing. And yeah, so leftturnscomic.com, where you can pick it up. Source Point will be printing the Kickstarter editions, and then it should be hitting retail shelves in the future. So the Kickstarter is a nice way to get it early and not have to wait through all the marketing and retail stuff that takes before it hits the bookshelf. There is an exclusive cover through the Kickstarter edition as well, and some extra perks that kind of get you to back that. So
sounds awesome. Where is the best place for people to follow you for more information about what you have cooking?
Probably best thing, I don't do Twitter. My Instagram, artronin9.com, is where it's 90% tattoo work, but my stories, I post updates. And so right now that's a big part of my, it's where I'm promoting all my Left Turn stuff as well. So if there are projects in life, that's usually where I post. My Facebook page as well. I think if you just search artronin9, you'll probably find me on there as well.
I couldn't find you at all, so thank you. I needed that.
Joshua Ross often brings up like an Australian Olympian or something. So, but artronin9, you'll find me everything. I've had that name for 25 years or something since college. So everything, my gamer tags, my Instagram, my Facebook, my Twitter page I don't use, whatever I have is artronin9. So
perfect.
That is probably the best place to kind of keep up to date. So.
I think Dirk put it down there so you know how to spell it.
Yes.
All right. Thank you guys so much. I'm so thankful for you guys, everyone showing up to support the show. Thanks for Dirk to show up. We had a bunch of creators come on. Thank you so much, Josh, for coming on and telling us all the cool information so that we can pick up this book.
Thanks for letting me ramble. So yeah, thank you.
All right, everybody. Stay tuned for other awesome experience programming. We'll see you guys next time for Talkin Shop.
Join the party. Head over to our link tree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.